I highly recommend a coach as well, because I actually studied life coaching back 10 years ago. And that's when I appreciated the art of coaching.
I realized that me as a person, I am a lot of energy, I am loving, I am spiritual. There's a saying, information alone is just information that stays in your head. We all know a lot of things. Start applying action into it. And that way you manifest it not just in here, but out here as well.
Hi, it's Linh Podetti, and in this video, I discuss the topic of finding fulfillment with Tou Ger Lee, a professional coach helping high achievers to add more meaning and fulfillment into their lives. Now, Tou Ger has first-hand experience with this problem. He achieved his dream of becoming an award-winning dancer and was on top of his game, but he felt miserable inside. He was able to help himself and has since coached hundreds of professionals around the world to reconnect with their purpose and create a life they love living.
Hi, how are you, Tou Ger? How are you?
I am good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for coming on today's show and to help people find success and fulfillment. Because when I met you on, I think it was an Asian Hustle Network, we really connected well, because I think we both really love the whole mindset, success, but at the same time, how to find fulfillment. Because a lot of people climb the corporate ladder or the business success and never find fulfillment. And then I came across you and you were like, you know, I try to help people. I'm like, oh, that is amazing, because I know that it's a struggle for people. So Tou Ger, if you could share with us, you know, what made you decide to get into this field of trying to help people with this problem of not feeling fulfilled?
Yeah, so a lot of it's my own personal story. I think anyone who's really trying to help other people, a lot of the times it comes from their own personal pain. So for me, before I became a coach, I was actually a professional dancer, which like a lot of people are like, how does that even happen? Right? You know, I started getting into coaching because I realized that I just wasn't happy with who I was. And I just didn't really know what my purpose in the world was, like quarter life crisis incident. And, you know, I joined a coaching program because the best way to learn for yourself is to learn how to teach it too, right? And so 6 months into this program, I just kind of realized like, wow, I have not been happy at all as a dancer. You know, I worked so hard and I was dancing with some of the best in the world and I was winning competitions. And I think in like 2015, I was known as one of the top freestyle dancers in the whole Midwest region. And there's so many things that I accomplished, but every time I accomplished it, I always felt like crap. It never made me feel good about myself. I remember there were so many, I won a competition called World of Dance one time in Chicago. You know, that night I went home alone. You know, I slept, and the next morning I woke up and there were some cool comments and some people, you know, messaging me, but a week goes by and it feels like nothing. You know, and the first thing I'm thinking about is like, oh my gosh, how do I ride that wave? Or what do I got to do now? What's next? Or I hope that these people didn't see all those bad videos of me on Instagram. You know, it was terrible. And so realizing all of these things while I was in the coaching program, it just made me think like, who else is out there who's working really hard, who has a lot of success, and the world thinks that they should be happy because of what it looks like. But deep down, they're just like, oh man, I don't feel good. Like this, it's just whatever. I feel kind of empty. And I don't think that people deserve to be living like that. You know, we have an abundant world right now where people can be living it, like making it, playing video games now. Like, of course you can do anything you want now. You know? And so I really transitioned because I think, you know, all I've ever wanted to do in my life was support people to do what they love, and to create a world where people love living their lives. And, you know, dance was great as a way to inspire people, but coaching was definitely the way that I was going to be able to make that impact a little more.
Did you get into dancing because you wanted to originally and you enjoyed it for a while, but you overspent your time in that field? Or, you know, where did the unhappiness or unfulfillment happen?
You know, I love dancing. I still love dancing. I still do it all the time personally, right? Just not professionally anymore. I think the unhappiness happened when I started pursuing it professionally. Because when I started doing that, it wasn't for the sake of like, just because I love doing it, I want to do it professionally. It was to try to prove something. It was to try to be like, hey, maybe if I have enough followers, enough fame, enough wins under my belt, then I will be good enough, right? Then the world will recognize me. It was a lot of trying to prove myself. You can only do that for so long until it's just like, you look back and the thing that you're trying to run away from, the thing that you're trying to prove, it's just kind of like, it's still right there and you're still afraid of it.
were your parents hard on you about winning? Because I know a lot of Asian parents are like, you better get this. I remember my parents put a lot of academic pressure on me. Was this purely just you wanting to be the best and feeling like you keep wanting to be better than before?
I think it was that. And I think it was also like, it was me always wanting to grow, but from a place of thinking, maybe if I grow, then I'll finally be something. I say this thing a lot of like high performers who are burnt out and whatnot. There's two reasons why people run in life, right? One is to get somewhere. The other reason why people run is to get away from something. And what we don't realize is a lot of high performers, a lot of hard workers are running away from something. They're running away from, again, not being good enough. They're running away from, maybe they grew up in a poor area and they're like running away from poverty. They're running away from all of these things. And that's why they're sprinting so hard. But at the end of the day, you turn around and it's still right there and you're still afraid of it. And for me, it became like, I love doing this, so I'm running towards it. And then like, oh, I'm going to do it professionally because I'm trying to get away from this thing. And so I think that's really what killed it for me. It was the pressure of like, I need to get away from, my story is I don't matter. Like that's my deepest fear, that I don't matter and I won't matter. And so like I was running away from that, thinking that maybe if I got 1,000 more followers, I will matter. Maybe if I did one more music video, I'll matter. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And would you say that once you sort out the intention, because like I know back then I had a problem too, in the sense that I was very ambitious, but I was trying to prove to my parents, because I had a lot of resentment against my parents. But it wasn't the day that I realized that was what was happening, because you kind of run your life and you don't really know what's going on in yourself. All I did was wrote a letter to myself as if I'm sending it to my parents and said, I forgive you, I don't care what you did to me in the past, and from here on I'm gonna do my thing, right? And then even though I'm still trying to pursue success, it's just different kind of feeling. It's like I'm doing it for myself and it's healthier. So do you say that it's not that you can't pursue things and go hard on your passion, it's just that you got to unblock, maybe there's something that's sabotaging you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's something, you got to know the reason why, right? We hear this all the time, know your why. And a lot of people, when you talk to them, they won't even realize that their why is they're trying to get away from something, like prove my haters wrong or something like that, And at the end of the day, I know like some of your companies and the great work that you've been doing, like I'm sure you've been able to identify when your why is not something you're running away from, but it's because you want to run towards a greater purpose. Yeah. It's so much more fulfilling.
Yeah. So what steps did you take to heal yourself? Like you went from someone that was it was achieving things and you should have been happy, but you weren't happy. And so then how do you come to a place where you're feeling fulfilled with your life?
For me, personally, it took me to actually take a step back from dance, because here's what I was doing. Maybe if I become a better dancer, then I'll, be a better person. Like it's again, attributing my level, my worth to the thing that I do. So what I had to do was stop working on my dance, stop working on my career, start working on myself as a person. So it took a lot of work. I was like, okay, so who is Tou Ger? What does Tou Ger actually want out of life? What are Tou Ger's deepest fears, right? It took a lot of work to really look at myself beyond the labels, beyond all of the doing, beyond just everything, like just right here, who is right here? And I know that sounds kind of cheesy and it sounds kind of like woo-woo in some ways, but at the end of the day, I don't think that people care about being a professional as much as they care about being a good person. And yet here we are always working towards the thing, trying to be more of a professional. And I think it's taking that out of the way and focusing on like the person side of it, the human side of it. That for me has been the greatest change to help me get to where I am and like make that shift. And I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of CEOs and a lot of other like high performers who are the same way. They attribute their success and their like business and everything that they do to their self-worth. And then it's like, well, what if, like during the pandemic, for example, unfortunately, a lot of businesses shut down. Does that mean that your worth is like just shut down too then? I would argue that you still have a lot of worth, but people don't do that that work to realize that. Having worked with a ton of people on this too, I do firmly believe that that is the work that needs to be done.
Because that's why we hear a lot of athletes or people who, tied their whole worth to their career. And then when the career ended, let's say as a sports star, you sometimes end at 20, 30 years old, and then they don't know what to do with their life. And, often case they might even get into depression and suicide. So what is the method to actually working on yourself? Like when you're saying, okay, I decided to work on myself as a different identity than just the profession, what does that practice look like?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't do it alone, because it's a lot to uncover. Grab a therapist, grab a coach, grab a friend that you trust, right? But just don't sit in your mind trying to do it alone, because that's not going to work. That's the very, very, very first part of the method there. The second thing I would say is ask yourself intentional questions and let it soak. I think a lot of people, we ask deep questions and the first answer is, I don't know. And the problem with that is that I don't know becomes kind of like the excuse to not look anymore. And if I do know, then I'll keep looking. Here's the thing. If you did already know, then chances are you're not digging deep enough. What I always propose to people is ask these deep questions like, who am I? What do I want out of life? What's my life's purpose? And yes, at first you might be confused. At first you might be like, but sit with it. Let yourself not know. Ponder on it. And one day when you're in the shower or you're driving in your car, it'll just kind of hit you. And I think that's the beauty of it. Like, be patient with it.
You're so right. I highly recommend a coach as well, because I actually studied life coaching back 10 years ago. And that's when I appreciated the art of coaching and having someone to ask you deep questions and not take your one first answer as the answer, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes as a coach, you even ask so many, it goes into layer that you're like, I can't think of anything else, but then somehow they push you. Just like a personal trainer that pushes you to do the 5th push-up. As a coach, a life coach, you're pushing people to dig even deeper into their mind to find that core answer. So then once they find their core answer, what would be some of the self-care secrets or tips that you would be able to give to continue on that journey of personal development?
The tip, once you find the answer to like, who am I? Like, what are my values? All of these, by the way, yes, I completely agree with you. I'm biased, so like, I highly recommend a coach. It doesn't have to be me. It could be you, Lynn. It could be anybody out there. But I think after you find that, start acting on them. Take action. There's a saying, information alone is just information that stays in your head. We all know a lot of things. I know about the War of 1812. I'm not going to do anything about that. That doesn't help me in any way, shape, or form, right? The thing is, what are you going to do about it? Because it's insight plus action that creates transformation. And so people, work really hard to get the insight, which is great. But then now it's like, how is that going to change the actions that you take on? So for example, for me, like the action I took on was I became a coach instead of dancing. The action I took on was I started a business. An action that I took on was I started coaching others. Start applying action into it. And that way you manifest it, not just in here, but out here as well.
So what you're saying is once you find yourself, then it will dictate what action you need to take, because you realize like, oh my God, I've always had this passion or this love for something, or I stopped doing this back then because of something. So then everyone's journey will be a bit different. You're going to figure out, okay, I need to do X and Y, right?
Yeah. And a simple way to like figure out what you need to do is it's just simply asking. I realize that me as a person, I am a lot of energy. I am loving. I am spiritual. Okay. So being loving, energy, spirit, what would I do? What would I do that would portray me as that person? Or what do I need to do to be more of that person? So there's simply that. If you realize what your values are, okay, my values are family, health, let's just say success. Okay, cool. So what are you going to do that is going to show that those are your values? How is the outside world going to see that? What are you actually going to like build with it? Right? And so asking yourself that question, okay, so now that you know this, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do with it?
How would you advise someone, like, let's say if you have a partner, a guy, right? A man, usually men are a little bit harder to get convinced to get help, right? If you know that, let's say your partner should get some coaching and figure out his goals and dreams and go deeper, what is the best way to kind of bring people this awareness or bring people to be interested in something like this?
I say questions, because I hear you're saying guys are very like rigid, like they don't want to be told what to do. Like we don't want to be told what to do. We don't want to be given, like, I already know that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Resistant.
And also I think they're afraid to dig deep with their feelings. They're not taught growing up to kind of explore feelings and emotions as much, right? And so then it's hard. They know that when they're working with a coach, it feels as if I'm going to have to do all that feely emotional work.
It's tough because you kind of have to like work around. I found for me personally, working with my female clients, like I can just tell them, you know, like, hey, you know, it seems like you're having this thing show up that's blocking you, and they're very receptive to it. If I tell that to like one of my male clients, they'll be like, no, I don't think you're right, man. I hear what you're saying, but you know, that's just a one-time thing. And so instead, what I'll have to do is be like, hey, you know, I noticed that one thing. How often does that happen? Okay, what do you think that means? Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, what do you want to do about that? Is that the way you want it to keep going? It's just asking questions, because what you realize is a lot of men, especially if they have like the alpha man type of mindset, they want to feel like they came up with the answers. It was their idea. And so the way you help them discover, or the way you help them like make them feel like it's their ideas, you just ask the questions. That's all it is. Yeah.
That's what I need to approach, because this is a real case scenario here is my husband. I wanted him to find his true interest in things. And I said, because he doesn't have a hobby, or he doesn't have like some things that keeps him occupied other than scrolling on Facebook, let's say. And then when I said, hey, you know, let's find a hobby, he goes, I know my hobby. I'm just going to buy a Harley Davidson and kind of open it apart and put it together. But basically, it's like just thought of an idea, and it's not really digging deep. And now to introduce him to coach, I kind of said it in the past, hey, you know, I recommend you working with a coach. I've always worked with a coach, and that's why our relationship is great, because I actually apply it into our relationship. And hey, you know, but what you're saying is don't tell them what to do. Somehow navigate through it and go, what would the putting the bike together help you feel, and how did you come up with that idea or something, right? To kind of lead into, he might not even know why he even picked that idea.
Exactly. There's all that. You know, I'm not sure how deep you're trying to get with your husband, but there's even one thing that I found helps a lot is just asking like, hey, what do you want to, like, just a year from now, what do you want life to look like? You know, chances are they're not going to be like it's the same, you know. I mean, if they are, then you just ask like, oh, why is that? Why do you want it to be the same? You don't want anything to change. You know, you can probe a little more there. But usually when you ask like the question, you know, what do you want life from like a year from now or 5 years from now? What do you want it to look like ultimately? They'll give you something, you know. Or if it's like, hey, let's just say you had like a year left to live. What are the things that you would do before that year ended? Kind of start unraveling the things that they actually secretly want but have never done. Yeah,
that's right. And I think it's really, that's why I appreciate good coaches, you know, and I can see you are a great coach, you're patient. I studied coaching, but I didn't do it because I just knew I could not be patient enough to ask the questions, right? And so like, even when I try to apply it to my husband and I'm like, you know, ask him a question, he will give me one answer. And then I go deeper and he's like, I already told you, you know, like he doesn't want to go deeper. So tell me more about your coaching program that you normally do with clients, and you know, how do people connect with you and how do they work with you if they're hearing this and they're like, yeah, I really need to work on my own self-worth or values.
And really quickly with your husband too, it also depends on who you hear it from. Right? Like, I'm sure there are things you hear from some people and you're like, no. And then you hear from other people and you're like, you're right. I will hear certain things from my coach, tell my girlfriend, and she'll be like, I've been telling you that for the last 2 years. So, you know, this just, I guess that's how we are as men. I don't know. But to answer your question of what my programs look like, the way I work with people, it's different for everyone. But what I'll say is I always like to start off with building a roadmap. Like, what do you actually want to get out of coaching me? Like, by the time we're done working together, what do you want your life to look like? And it's all about clarity, which is like, for me, the number one secret to success, getting very, very, very clear on what it is that you want. A lot of people, you'll be surprised by like how vague their goals are. And it's like, of course you don't hit it then, right? It's like, imagine me telling you the target is over here somewhere and you just kind of shoot like, you're probably not going to hit the target. With my clients, the first thing is getting clarity. What does this actually look like in the real world? So for example, if they say, or I want to figure out my business. Okay, cool. So what does that business actually look like a year from now? How many clients do you want to have? How many workers do you want to have? How much money do you want to have made? What is that business like? Is it a B2B business? Is it a B2C business? All of these little things, getting clarity on it. And once you get clarity on it, really all it's about is what's getting in your way of actually creating that. If you can picture, it's kind of like there's what you want, there's where you are currently, and then there's the gap. What's in the gap right now? How do we skip over? And then of course, challenges come up in the way. Sometimes like limiting beliefs or our historical trauma gets in the way too. And these are all obstacles that I then help my clients to overcome. Okay, hey, you're dealing with, you're not motivated. That's an obstacle. Cool. So how do we support you to move past that? Like, how do we support you to create motivation or work without motivation? Right. Let's just say if the obstacle is like you often come into moments where you have a lot of feelings, like because you have a lot of feelings, you can't really move forward. Okay, cool. Well, how do we help you cope with the emotions so that you can still actively move towards the things that you're doing? Yeah, and you'll realize too, a lot of these things are more than just with that one goal. Like they translate to universal, like your whole life. But it's just you have the goal there as the measure to see how much the person is growing. Because of course, if you're working with this person on, again, let's just say building a business and 6 months in, like they haven't even started, you're probably not really moving in the right direction. There's probably a lot of obstacles you haven't looked at that's deeper. So the goal really just acts as a measure point. So hopefully that kind of explains and gives a breakdown of like the way I start working with my clients and the way that, we kind of move through the process throughout the time.
Yes. So how else can people work with you? Because you did mention there was a special program that you've got for people.
Yeah. So for 2021, I made the commitment to provide one free coaching session every single weekday for the whole year. I think that's like 277 free sessions. And these are all completely like, these aren't considered sales calls or discovery calls or anything. It's just simply to support. I know 2020 was a really rough year for a lot of people. And 2021, they took it as an opportunity to be like, hey, this is my comeback year. Come back bigger, stronger than ever. This was just my way to be able to support them while they do that. So if anyone out there is, wanting some coaching, wanting some support on anything that you're dealing with or any of the goals that you have, or if your life is already a 10 and you want to turn it up to an 11, reach out. I'm happy to support however I can, get to know you. And again, these are like zero sales pitches. It's just, I just want to be able to coach more and offer more support.
Oh, that's amazing. I guess I'll put all the links in the details in the description below so everyone can grab that. And I think I might take up on that because I like to experience it, coaching myself. And then I would even know, what it's like to share with others. And then my next goal is to get my husband on a coaching call with you as well. But thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I always love talking to you. I love your energy and thank you for having me on your channel.
Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. Love to hear in the comments below, what is the one thing that is causing you to feel unfulfilled right now? Now, if you'd like to learn more tips on improving your life, then check out my next video.